Imagine a man who eats breakfast, gets sick, and grows old just like we do, yet is worshipped as the architect of the universe. In ancient Egypt, this wasn't madness, it was the law. Millions of people worshipped a living human of flesh and blood, the same way they worshipped the sun or the Nile itself. His whims were sacred, his death was a cosmic catastrophe. But how does a mere mortal take a seat among the stars? How did this belief hold power for thousands of years, outlasting wars, famines, and the rise and fall of empires? Was the pharaoh a magical symbol, or are we looking at the most brilliant political hoax in human history? Today, we're stepping inside the mind of a person living 4,000 years ago to understand, what does it feel like to believe that your king is God? Picture a man before whom thousands fell prostrate. When he left his palace, the crowd froze. His name was whispered with terror. A single moment of disrespect could cost you your head. We usually call this a cult of personality or simple dictatorship. We say the ancient Egyptians were naive. They actually thought their king was a god. But let's stop there. Do you really think the people who built the pyramids with millimeter precision, who mapped the stars and engineered complex irrigation systems, were too stupid to tell a human from an immortal spirit? Of course not. They saw him eat. They saw him get tired. They knew he bled. And yet they called him Necher Nefer, the good God. Here is the first trap of our perception. When we hear the word God, we imagine Zeus throwing lightning or an invisible, omnipotent creator. But for an Egyptian, the pharaoh's divinity wasn't a personal superpower. It was a job. Think of God not as a biological species, but as a spacesuit. The person inside might be fragile, but as long as he's in the suit, he performs a function no one else can. The pharaoh was the point where heaven touched the earth. Now, any logical teenager and any ancient Egyptian eventually asked the obvious. If you're a god, why are you getting wrinkles? Why are your teeth falling out? And why eventually are you put in a sarcophagus and never waking up? This is Egypt's central paradox. The death of a pharaoh was a national crisis, a shockwave. Every time a ruler passed away, the system cracked. It would seem that if one god died, the whole theory was a lie, right? Imagine the disillusionment of a young scribe watching the body of the immortal Lord of the universe being carried out. At that moment, the magic shatters. Faith turns to dust. If he's as mortal as my grandfather, why did we spend decades building him a mountain of stone? Why did we give him half our harvest? The Egyptians weren't blind. They saw death. But instead of losing faith, they created the most complex and beautiful philosophical system in history to bridge that gap. For an Egyptian, the world wasn't just a collection of rocks and water. The world was a chaotic mess that was trying to swallow order every single second. Think of it like a video game. If you stop pressing the buttons, the character stops and the enemies take over. Egypt believed the sun didn't rise on its own. It rose because someone was maintaining the law of the universe. Ma'at, truth, harmony, and justice. The pharaoh wasn't a god as a person. He was a god as an instrument. He held two entities within him. One was the biological host, the human. The other was the divine spark, the Ka of the kingship, which was passed from ruler to ruler. When an Egyptian bowed to the pharaoh, he wasn't bowing to Tutankhamun or Ramses. He was bowing to the office that kept the sun in the sky. It's like respecting the law, not the specific person wearing the police uniform. They said, the king is dead, but the kingship lives. Death was just a change of biological hardware. The god didn't die, he just changed his clothes. It was a comforting thought, but the real reason was much darker. We often assume pharaohs invented their divinity out of ego. Look at me, I'm a god, bring me gold. We see it as the ultimate form of narcissism. But the truth is, being a god in Egypt wasn't a privilege. It was a crushing responsibility. The pharaoh was made a god because the people needed him to be. Egypt is a tiny strip of green surrounded by a vast, lethal desert. Life there hung by a thread. If the Nile didn't flood, people starved. If a civil war broke out, everyone died. The people needed a guarantee that the world wouldn't fall apart tomorrow morning. They didn't just need a good manager or a strong leader. They needed someone responsible for the very movement of the planets. The pharaoh was a hostage to his own divinity. He couldn't just take a vacation. He was bound to rituals. If there was a drought, it wasn't climate change. It was the pharaoh failing his divine duty. His godhood wasn't a gift. It was a golden chain that tied him to the welfare of his people. Why did this system last for 3,000 years? No other empire in history has survived that long. The answer is as simple as it is chilling. The Egyptians agreed to see the pharaoh as a god because it was the only alternative to chaos. The moment you admit your ruler is just a man, you gain the right to argue with him. You gain the right to civil war, to differing opinions, to power struggles. But in the fragile ecology of ancient Egypt, internal strife meant death by starvation for everyone. The desert does not forgive debate. The god-king was the social glue. It was a grand lie or a grand truth, depending on your view, that everyone agreed to believe in order to survive. They turned a man into a god so they wouldn't kill each other. They understood that the moment the magic vanished and the king became just like us, discipline would collapse and the sands of the desert would bury their fields. The pharaoh didn't force them to believe. The Egyptians needed him to be a god. They maintained this myth for 30 dynasties because the price of the truth was too high. The price of the truth was the end of civilization. So the next time you see the golden mask of Tutankhamun, don't think of vanity. Think of a people who wanted to save their world so badly that they lifted an ordinary man into the heavens, just so they had something to hold on to on this hollow earth.